name is Maggie. I do want to say the first 10 or 15 times I was asked to do this, I said no, because I am not a speaker, I'm not eloquent, nerves eat me up. I do love to talk. You can ask Miss Dorothy and Miss Nanette, wherever they are. They're my teachers. But there was a time where I made a promise to God. Goodness. That if he would make me a mom, I would always tell what he had done for me. So, okay, here we go. I have to start by saying I've always dreamed of being a mother. From the time I knew what a mother was, I dreamed of having children. 4 or 5, throw a set of twins in there is what I would always say. I even tossed around being an OBGYN for many years to bring babies into the world and later decided nursing would be my path instead. Dustin and I married in June of 2015. We decided we would start a family right away since I graduated nursing school 6 months after we were married. I had time to graduate, take my boards, get a job, and then I could finally be what I always dreamed of being, a mom. 1 month passed, 2, 3, my graduation came and went. I passed nursing boards, got a job, and before I knew it, 2 years had passed of testing monthly and never getting a positive. I told Dustin I would order all the supplements for us both, and we also tried the Ava bracelet to monitor my ovulation. Month after month would be more tears than the month before. It didn't help, all my friends were having children at the time and would have the story of, we weren't even trying, or what a surprise, I didn't even want kids yet. It all felt like taking a dagger through the heart. How could other moms take for granted what other women would give anything to have and not realize how their words could be so insensible to others? I was angry. I begged, pleaded, and cried to God to give me a child. Not 5 anymore. 1 will do. God, if you would give me 1 child, I'll never ask you for anything in life. Sorry. I worked in the emergency room and urgent care during my first years as a nurse. One particular patient sticks out in my mind to this day, and I don't think I'll ever forget him. Thanks, that works better. Let me find where I was. I can't tell you now why she came in, but 2 of the questions we would ask is, are you pregnant? And are there any past procedures you've had that we should note in your chart? Her response was, yes, I'm pregnant. It hasn't even been 2 months since my abortion of twins. I aborted them because they were fraternal and not identical. What is the point of having twins if they won't look alike, she said. She laughed and proceeded to say, I guess I'm just fertile. I think my whole world stopped turning. Why would God give this girl twins who he knew she would kill and then bless her with another child right after? But I couldn't have 1. That night, after Dustin went to bed, I went to our living room and hit my knees. Through the tears, I yelled at God, what is so hard? Are you not listening to me day after day? Ask you for a child. You give babies to all these women who don't want them, who will abort them, but someone who is begging you for just 1 baby and trying to live right, it's nothing but heartache every month. It was time to see a doctor. I knew deep down something had to be wrong, but I figured my OB would just put me on some oral medication and I would be pregnant in no time. My appointment came. He told me they would start by drawing blood and looking at my levels, and we would go from there. A few days later, my labs were back. The nurse told me to come into the office to discuss the results. Well, that's odd. Why can't they tell me over the phone what the next step is? This seems a little over the top. So to the doctor I went. Dustin had taken my car to work that day. So I was stuck with his 20-plus-year-old truck that looked like it wouldn't make it 2 miles down the road to go to this appointment in Little Rock. There's a reason I'm putting that in there. I made it there, and to my surprise, oral medicine wouldn't be the answer. He proceeded to tell me my AMH, a fancy word for egg quality and quantity, was 0.45. For my age at the time, it should have been between 10.0 and 14.0. He said he would refer me to a fertility doctor, but not to get my hopes up. This was extremely low, equivalent to a woman about to go through menopause. The quality of the eggs I had left would not be good, and to start thinking about adoption. He said, "I'm not the final say, but you'll never have a child of your own. It's not in the cards with that lab result." I could have heard a pin drop. I can still see his piercing blue eyes looking at me, no smile on his face. Was this real? Did he just say that? I had him repeat it a couple times because it couldn't be right. I had to be a mom. I had to carry my own child. This is all I've ever dreamed of. I got in that old truck to go home, sobbing uncontrollably. I had made it past the Broadway exit on the interstate, heading towards home when Dustin's truck quit running. I was able to make it to the side of the interstate before it came to a complete stop. Are you kidding me? What have I done, God? What did I do that is so terrible that I can't carry my own child, and now the truck breaks down? At least get me home so I can cry in peace. As I waited for my in-laws to come pick me up, I sat in this truck on the side of the interstate on a cold day in November and honestly thought this was the lowest point I had ever been at in my life. A few days of playing the poor, pitiful me card came and went. I was seeing the fertility specialist the next week, and maybe good news would be coming our way. A friend told me, "Maggie, if God lays it on your heart, there's a reason. He laid it on your heart to be a mom, and you will be one. Not on your time, but his." The day had come for our first appointment at Arkansas Fertility with Dr. Modis. Dustin and I went together, and we're excited to hear what our next steps would be. I had my labs redrawn before this appointment and also had an HSG procedure that sends dye through your uterus and tubes, and he would go over that as well. The nurse called my name and took me back to his office, not an exam room. How weird is that, I thought. He came in and introduced himself, sat down, and got to it. He confirmed what my previous doctor had told me, but had options for us. We would skip every fertility treatment known to man and go straight to in vitro. He told me he would give me the highest dose of stimulant drugs during our IVF cycle, monitor me every 2 days, and if I produced enough eggs that measured right, we would go through with an egg retrieval and try. But he was concerned and told us we needed to really think about it because it wasn't cheap and the odds were not in our favor. He recommended to start considering adoption. I didn't need to think about it. I told him I didn't care what it took, how much it cost. I wanted a child, and I wanted to carry my own child. And refusing the treatment wasn't an option. I had to have a hydrosonogram before we could start injections to make sure my uterus was cleared to house an embryo when the time came. My spirits were up. This was the closest we had been, and I believed God would make me a mother. He had laid it on my heart for so many years, and there was a reason, and I believed it. The day came for my hydrosonogram. One last thing before I could start my injections. During the procedure, Dr. Modis said, and turned the screen around where I could see. He pointed to a dark circle in the middle of my uterus and said, "It's a mass." He said, "For your age, I'm sure it's benign, but you will have to have surgery to have it removed and tested, and then we will move forward from there." Another mountain to climb, another fork in the road. A few days of playing the poor, pitiful me card again, and I was ready to be paused. I had to keep reminding myself there was a reason I was going to be a mom. I had to keep going for my future child. Surgery day came and went. They removed the mass, and it was indeed benign. I was able to start injections, and it was go time. Our first round of IVF had started. 2 days of injections to stimulate egg production had passed. And I went in for an ultrasound. No eggs. It wasn't over, he said. To keep doing my injections, and we would follow up in 2 more days. So I did. 2 days later, I went in for another ultrasound, and there was 1 egg. I was so excited to hear him say that. But he followed that up with saying, "I'm canceling your cycle." And all I could think of was what and why. And he said, "At this point in your treatment, you should have many more than this. 1 egg is not worth going through an egg retrieval. The odds of this 1 egg making it through retrieval, insemination, and 5 days of growth is very slim." He told me to stop all medication. I would have a cycle, and then we could meet to discuss our next steps. When we met with him next, he gave us a few options that we refused. I told him I wanted to try again, and he advised against it, but had one more thing we could try, and if it didn't work, it would be the end of the road for us. We were game. I was ready, and I didn't care what it consisted of. If it made 1 baby, it would be worth it, so we waited 1 month to start our new cycle. A new plan in place, and this was it, I was sure. We prayed, our church prayed, our parents prayed, my friends prayed. I went to Facebook to finally share our story and what we had been struggling with the past 4 years, and I had the internet praying. On day 4, we had 13 eggs. We moved forward with an egg retrieval where all 13 were retrieved. 13 eggs were inseminated, making them embryos. 5 days later, we had 5 embryos that made it. They were great quality, and it was time for our transfer. I would have 1 embryo transferred, and the other 4 would be frozen to use at a later date. The transfer day came. It was the embryo of highest quality and was the pick of the litter, I guess you could say. After all these years, procedures, injections, and tears, we were going to be parents. We were going to have a baby. I was finally pregnant. Fast forward to a routine blood draw at the clinic that we would do after a transfer before you would have your first ultrasound. And my phone rang, and the nurse on the other end had bad news. My levels were not where they needed to be. The joy faded, heartache crept in. Our worst fears came true. We had lost the baby. My daddy's gonna come play for me on this first song that is dedicated to my baby in heaven. And I hope any of you here that have lost a baby, that will touch your heart too. And he's blowing out stuff.
Guess I'll have to wait to hold you in my arms, but God knows how I held you in my heart. It hurts to think that it may be a while before we see how beautiful you are. And you may not know, but all our kids have songs. And though you've flown away for now, I'm still gonna write you one. Usually love smile just thinking about how you left and your first steps will be on holy ground. Be still, my heart, heaven's the perfect way to start. I have to say, I'm fighting jealousy, 'cause the angels get to teach you how to sing. And I had your room already with shades of blue and green, but we know nothing can compare to all you've seen. What a sweet, sweet day it's gonna be when you play with your brothers and sisters together on golden streets. Usually lullabies don't make mommies and daddies cry, but we're both sad and overjoyed to know that Jesus holds you tight. Baby, you made us proud. We smile just thinking about how you left and your first steps will be on holy ground. Be still, my heart, heaven's the perfect way to start. Usually lullabies don't make mommies and daddies cry, but we're both sad and overjoyed to know that Jesus holds you tight. Baby, you made us proud. We smile just thinking about how you left and your first steps will be on holy ground. Be still, my heart. Be still, my heart. Be still, my heart. Heaven's the perfect way to start.
One of the best guitar players I know, I guess so. All right. All right. Isaiah 66:9. I will not cause pain without allowing something new to be born, says the Lord. Psalm 37:4. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. How much can one person handle was one of the questions I remember asking God in the weeks after. Looking back now, I imagine God picking me up after that prayer and carrying me the rest of the way. The journey was not near over, but the only way I would make it further was not by his guidance anymore, but by him carrying me while showing me what I could face and overcome with him leading the way. The old saying, God will not give you more than you can handle, could not be more untrue. He will give you more than you can handle. This was the only way you can truly learn and trust and depend on him. 4 embryos were left. They were frozen the day of my first transfer and would need to be thawed before they could be transferred. Dustin and I had decided to transfer 2 embryos this time, which would leave us 2 left frozen. My transfer day came, both embryos survived the thaw, and my transfer went perfectly. I had McDonald's French fries, which is an IVF wives' tale. and was ready for positive news. 5 days later, I took a test and laid it on the counter. I couldn't look at it. I went to run errands, and when I came back home, I decided I would look. I told myself either way, God is good, He has a plan, and everything will be okay. I rushed to look at the test, and it was positive. I was pregnant. I arrived for my first ultrasound at the clinic after all of our routine blood draws to find a different doctor working since mine was in surgery. He was rushing, trying to see all the patients and picking up the slack. He didn't wait on Dustin to get there. Oh well, I thought. There will be more, and I was so excited to see if I was having 1 or 2 babies since we had transferred 2 embryos. He started the ultrasound, and I laid there for what felt like ages, waiting to hear if it was 1 or 2, and smiled thinking about getting to hear the heartbeat. He removed the ultrasound probe and said, "This baby is measuring behind, the heart rate is low, and your yolk sac is large. Those things combined point to fetal demise in an estimated 10 to 12 days. I will meet with you in my office to discuss a D&C as our next step." Dustin had made it by then, and we went with me to his office. I couldn't speak, so Dustin did it all. The doctor confirmed what I already knew to Dustin, and we left. We sat in our car in the parking lot, both crying our eyes out. I think Dustin even beat the steering wheel a little bit that day. And all I could do was ask God over and over what I had done this bad in my life to be punished like this over and over. I was never a bad teenager. I didn't go to parties, went to college, didn't skip class. I felt like I tried to live a life glorifying to God up until that point. And yet I felt like I was being punished. Okay, now I'll sing my next song. If I can find the...
Standing on the edge of losing everything. You're out of options, out of hope. You lost your way. Happy ever after didn't turn out like you planned. Searching for a solid place to stand. Looking at the ashes of what could have been, you can't help wondering if you finally reached the end. But in your place of weakness is where miracles begin. Watch and see the dead can live again. This is where amazing happens. This is where God steps in. This is the place where broken dreams can live again. When you're to the end of hope, nowhere else for you to go. Watch and see the best is coming now. This is where amazing happens. Dawn can never come unless there's been a night. Healing cannot come without a ruined life. Mercy's only given to the one who's made mistakes. Only shattered life sees saving grace. This is where amazing happens. This is where God steps is the place where broken dreams can live again. When you're to the end of hope, nowhere else for you to go. Watch and see the best is gonna happen. This is where amazing happens. Nothing's ever found unless it first was lost. There's not a resurrection without there is a cross. This is where amazing happens. This is where God stands in. This is the place where broken dreams can live again. Nowhere else for you to go. But you see the place of second chances. This is where amazing happens. When you're to the end of hope, nowhere else for you to go. Welcome to the place of second chances. This is where amazing happens. This is where amazing happens. This is where amazing happens.
All right. I had multiple people tell me to go to my OB and get a second opinion before driving home that day. One of those being Gail Parker. I called his office and he met me in the lobby. I was sent to ultrasound immediately, and she took her time measuring everything multiple times. I felt like it took hours to see the doctor after this, but it was probably a total of 10 minutes. He and the nurse came in, and I had Dustin on speakerphone. He sat down, grabbed my hands, and said, "Maggie, I have looked at this every way I could. Your baby's perfectly fine." I'm not God. Things can happen. But right now, everything looks just as it should. 2 weeks later, in my fertility specialist's office, where he confirmed what my OB had found and apologized for his partner's findings. And for the first time in 10 weeks, we could celebrate our baby on the way and breathe again. As I entered week 30 of pregnancy, I was at a routine doctor appointment that had an ultrasound during it. I was there by myself and didn't expect to encounter any issues, as the pregnancy had been without issue since the scare at the beginning. During the ultrasound measurements, the tech kept looking concerned, but I wasn't allowing myself to be worked up. After she finished, she told me to go have a seat in the waiting room and the doctor would be with me shortly. Once I was back, I found I was seeing a different doctor because mine was out that day. This doctor was actually wonderful and ended up being my OBGYN after this visit, and she is still currently to this day. "Maggie, I'm going to send you across the street to be admitted," she said. "Your baby is showing signs of growth restriction, especially in his legs and stomach, and he's 3 weeks behind." Sorry, I'm all someplace. They would do tests to make sure his cord blood flow was good and that my fluid was where it needed to be. And if it wasn't, we would be delivering early. After being admitted, they gave me injections to develop his lungs. I was inpatient for 2 days until all the testing was completed. They had decided he was getting great blood flow through my cord, and my fluid levels were great. So I would follow up with a specialist to have ultrasounds and NSTs, a non-stress test for fetal kick counts, every 3 days. After starting this every 3-day Little Rock appointment schedule, everyone's world came crashing down as COVID was just announced in the United States. You take a woman who has waited years to be pregnant, now going every 3 days to a doctor for a complication, add COVID on top of it all, which meant my husband couldn't join me for appointments, our family wouldn't be allowed at the hospital for birth, and the thought of letting anyone around our baby when he was to arrive was overwhelming. God has a sense of humor. I had already figured this out multiple times before. I could see him telling me, "You didn't specify how this pregnancy or life around you was to go when I finally made you a mother." I bring this up because there was one thing I was able to do for the better during all of this. After COVID, that is wrong. There we go. They announced the hospital visitor policy at my hospital was for the mother only. Not only family, but the father of the baby was not allowed in the delivery room or the hospital either. The thought of not having Dustin by my side was unsettling. I reached out to Channel 4 News. They ended up interviewing me, airing it on television, and the hospital reached out to them the next day asking them to have it taken off the air and that they would change the policy immediately. Within a day, they were allowing one person to be with the birth mom throughout the stay. I had several expecting moms reach out to me on Facebook Messenger after seeing my interview, thanking me that their husband now would be able to join the birth of their child. After several weeks of seeing the specialist every 3 days, I was 36 weeks pregnant, and my doctor decided it was time to take the baby. He had not shown much growth since 31 weeks pregnant and estimated a weight of 3 pounds. Our doctor told us NICU would be in the delivery room and that we would likely meet him a day or two after the birth once he was settled. April 19th, 2020 arrived, the day our son was going to arrive. The journey to get to that day was not ideal or without stress or tears, but we were going to be parents. I was going to see with my own eyes what God, science, my husband, and I made together. My emotions overwhelmed me and still do to this day, as y'all couldn't already tell. Many people don't get to see God work right before their eyes in life. But I had a front row seat to watching God's perfect journey from the 4 years before to then on him answering my prayers. Langston Matthew was born at 10:01 a.m. Glory to God, their measurements were wrong. He was 5 pounds, 5 ounces, and did not have to go to the NICU. They handed me my perfect little boy with a head full of hair, and as he laid on my chest, every moment that tried me on the journey to become a mom went away. It all made sense. It was worth it. In that moment, I would have done it 1,000,000 times over. Just to kiss his face, smell his smell, hold him skin to skin, and take in being a mom, finally. If I didn't know what it was like to be broken, how would I know what it felt like to be whole? If I didn't have to walk through the dark valley, how would I enjoy the view from the top of the mountain? If I didn't have to pray and trust God to achieve my only goal in life, things could be taken for granted, and I wouldn't get the testimony to stand before you today and tell you what God has done for me. I wouldn't change a thing. The infertility, the 4 years of heartbreak, the debt, 2 rounds of IVF, and everything that comes with that. This journey made me the woman I am today. God is faithful in every aspect of our life. I love that I have this testimony to share with others and brag on what he's done for me and what he can do for you. When I thought I was being punished and my prayers were not being heard. God was just preparing my story. He knew all along what the end result would be. He was not overwhelmed, worried, or impatient at any point in the process. If you're praying for something right now and God isn't answering, stay faithful, patient, and strong, because He's working. And guess what? He already knows what your future holds. He doesn't place something on our hearts for nothing. There's a reason. That's Him speaking to you. Fast forward 2 years, and God blessed us again with another beautiful baby boy from the 2 frozen embryos we had left. Doctors told us no, but God's final answer was yes. 1 Samuel 1:27, for this child we have prayed. Hebrews 6:15, and so it was that having waited long and endured patiently, realized and obtained what God had promised. Matthew 21:22, and whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. I told Dustin to bring my babies in because for those who don't know me, I want you to see firsthand what the Lord did for us. This is Browse Cash, and that's Langston Maggie. Can you say hi? I have one more song for you.
Oh, your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, the darkest night. You were close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I
Thank you.